Hi. Okay, this is going to be the video for Module 8. And just a couple of things to talk about before I get into the content. I have requested a rescheduling for the film viewing for Lolly's Kin that I had talked about before, since it got snowed out that week. I've requested to have it on March 4th or March 6th. I think March 4th is the first date that I gave, so that's a Tuesday. And it's the week, I think, before spring break. But anyway, so I hope that that's a date that you can make for those of you that were going to join me last time. If it's not, then please let me know. If you do plan to come, also please let me know. So again, I'm going to try and show Lolly's Kin on March 4th in Adderhold 627 from noon to 2. Okay? All right, so let's see here. Module 8 video. Okay, so spring, you're in chapter 8. You're actually taking a break from the Ravitch and the Darling Hammond books for this particular week because you're also going to have the midterm this week. So anyway, in spring, in chapter 8, it's a very interesting chapter. It's an important chapter filled with information that you need to understand. But I guess if you were to look at it in sort of a summary form, you need to understand that at this time in history, some major factors are contributing to schools having to change the way that they deal with the community. They're becoming viewed as much more social centers. They're taking on lots and lots of social abilities or capabilities. They're starting to fulfill different needs of society in different ways. And I suppose the three biggest factors that spring talks about contributing to this are, immigration, and you have a much larger population of people coming in, but you also have a larger population of people who don't speak the same language necessarily, don't have the same eating habits, a lot of different things, different cultures. So obviously Americanization is going to tie into that. So immigration, industrialization, okay, people moving from outlying areas, all moving into the cities to work in industry and factories, of course, is changing the makeup of families. It's changing how people live. And then, of course, that contributes to urbanization. So now you've got all of these people living in very tight, close quarters together, and you've got a spread of disease, a spread of crime in some ways. So he addresses all of this and basically says that the schools start to take on some of the sort of ameliorative effects or capabilities of taking care of these problems. They start to have school nurses who not only will help, students with health care while they're at school, but they'll also teach, how to prepare food sanitarily and how to have sanitary habits and washing your hands and cleaning yourself and these types of things. So you also have schools taking on, being an after-school activity place where so students stay out of trouble so that they don't get into trouble, so that they don't, aren't affected by the outlying society as well, that they have a safe place to come and play on the playground, that they have after school activities, these types of things. You have classes now for adults too, being given in the schools. Auditoriums there for their use if they want their clubs to meet there. You have after school clubs, these types of things. So the schools start to take on many new roles in society. And of course, the kindergarten, there's lots of different home economics that he talks about in this chapter. And these are all very important, sort of turning points in the school's role for you to think about. Because, obviously our schools do that and more nowadays. Okay, so then the other, since you're taking a break from reading in the Darling Hammond and the Ravitch books, I wanted you to read a very important article. It's not even an article. It's actually the introduction to a book by Annette Lareau, who's a social scientist. She's worked on educational issues, particularly on how parents raise their children. And, she's come up with some very interesting theories about how parents' social status, social class affects how they raise their children. And she has in the article, you'll get an introduction to the book. The book is an excellent book if you ever do get an opportunity, for another class, maybe you have to choose a book or something like that. You might want to look into it because it's actually very interesting. But anyway, she does a lot of research on different families, and what she finds is that the social class of a family is a larger predictor of how the different sort of, she calls it cultural logics of child rearing, and how parents raise their children. And it's tied more to social class, okay, either middle class or working class or poor, than it is even tied to race. So that's an interesting finding that she finds. So that's definitely important. And I give you a PowerPoint that talks about some of the differences between her ideas. There is a video at the end of the PowerPoint. Please watch it in PowerPoint mode or in slideshow mode, and that way you can hopefully watch the link. It's a short interview with her, and it's very enlightening, and it sort of sums up, she herself is interviewed, and she sort of sums up what she's talked about in the introduction to her book. I think that the important thing, though, that you need to understand here is, and she's saying one is not, one way of raising children is not better or worse than the other. The only thing is that our institutions, our American institutions, particularly the school in this instance, it tends to privilege one child rearing practice over the other. And of course, it's the middle class, way of raising children that tends to get privileged in our schools. So I think that this article is a very, very important. Being a teacher myself for 14 years in the public schools, after I read this article, I was able to look back at all of those years of teaching, and I wished I had read it, when I was actually teaching. It would have made a lot more sense. But anyway, this particular article and her research definitely speaks to me and my experience in schools. So hopefully you can get something out of that as well. All right, so that's what you're going to do. You're going to watch basically or view 2 PowerPoints. You're going to read Spring Chapter 8, the Laroe introduction, and watch that PowerPoint. You need to finish your current event and go ahead and turn that into the Dropbox. I believe there's a discussion prompt just asking you some really basic questions about the Laroe article. And then you have a midterm. And I was going to do a separate video for the midterm, but I don't think that's really necessary. Essentially, your midterm is going to be, and it will be in a separate module, though, than this particular module for Module 8. I'm going to have you view an interesting lecture. I think it's about 19 minutes. It's a lecture by Kenneth Robinson, Sir Kenneth Robinson. He's what you call an educationalist. Okay, he's got that kind of a title, but he's somebody who's done a lot of research, who's very influential in policy, and he tends to focus on how arts have been removed from a lot of public schools. Now, he is a Brit. He's from England originally. I think he lives in the United States now. But I want you to go ahead and watch this video. It's a TED Talk, if you've heard about these TED Talks. If you haven't, they're wonderful, and you should watch some sometime and learn about them. But it's a TED Talk, so I want you to go ahead and watch that. I've given you the link. And then I have just basically you're going to respond to his TED Talk, and I've given you guidelines as to how you should respond in about a 4 to 5 page essay format response. Okay, and so that's laid out in the midterm module, which will open up. It is due Monday, March 3rd. So it's actually due a day after, the module would normally close. I gave you one extra day. And, it's pretty straightforward. I just want to know what you think about it. I want you to make some connections to the class material. I want you to sort of analyze it yourself. And, I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say about it. Anyway, so if you have any questions, obviously, about the midterm, about anything, email me, and I will try and get back to you as soon as possible. And I think that that's it for Module 8, and I will see you guys again in Module 9.